The spaceport was noisy, crowded and full of different alien smells. Merchants shouted, engines hummed, and robots rolled past with crates of blinking lights. In the middle of it all, a young alien girl moved nervously through the crowd, holding a small cup of blue liquid with both hands. Her name was Rinari, and her eyes kept scanning every corner like something might jump out at her. She wore a long robe that was clearly too big for her thin frame, and her feet were bare. She didn't belong here, but she had no other place to go. She kept her head low and whispered to herself, "Just bring the drink, say sorry, and go." But before she reached the stall she worked at, someone turned the corner fast. A tall human man in a black jacket walking quickly and not looking down. Rinari's shoulder bumped his chest. The drink spilled. The bright blue liquid splashed all over the front of his clean white shirt. The man stopped, looked down slowly. Everyone near them froze. A silence fell over the stall area, as if the engines had stopped breathing. Rinari's eyes widened. She dropped the cup and fell to her knees. I'm sorry, sir, please don't report me, please, I'll wash it, I promise, I'll wash it with my own hands." The human stared at her, confused. Then he gave a soft laugh. "It's just a shirt, you know." Looked up at him, shocked. He held out a hand to help her up. "Come on, you really want to clean it? Fine, follow me." People watched in silence as Rinari got up and followed the human out of the crowd. Whispers started behind them. "He's taking her to his ship," one said. "She's in trouble now," said another, but Rinari didn't feel like she was in trouble. Not yet. Not with him. They walked through narrow metal corridors and past glowing signs until they reached a docked ship, old but strong-looking with human markings. The man opened the hatch and stepped inside. She followed, looking around at the strange but clean space. Tools were lined up neatly. Wires curled in bins and a faint smell of oil filled the air. He pulled off the stained shirt and handed it to her, now standing in a sleeveless black undershirt. "Here," he said. "Knock yourself out." She took the shirt with both hands like it was a sacred object. "Where is water?" He laughed. "You don't have to really wash it, you know, I was joking." But she was already moving, looking for a sink. "I want to," she said quietly. "I made mistake." He tilted his head and watched her for a while. Her skin was a soft, silvery blue, with faint glowing lines under it. Her fingers were long and delicate, and she moved like she was always ready to run. After a few minutes of scrubbing in the corner sink, she turned back. Her sleeves were wet, her hair clinging to her cheek. "I cleaned," she said softly. "But, stain not go, I sorry." "It's okay," the man said, taking the wet shirt. "I'm Jackson, by the way." She bowed her head slightly. "Rinari, you don't talk like a local," Jackson said, sitting on the metal bench near the control panel. "You running from something?" She froze. Then she quickly shook her head. "No running." But he didn't believe her. Not with those bruises half hidden under her collar. Not with how she kept glancing at the hatch. Not with how she flinched every time he moved, even. "A little all right," he said calmly. "You want to stay here tonight? I've got a spare blanket and a floor." She looked up, surprised. Then she slowly nodded. "Yes, thank you." That night, Rinari sat curled up in the corner of the ship near the engine room, holding the blanket like it might fly away. She didn't speak much, only asked if she could keep the lights dim. Jackson didn't push her. He just checked the outer sensors, made himself some food, and let her be. But when he passed her quietly during the night to get a tool, he noticed something. She wasn't sleeping. She was crying silently, holding something small and silver in her hand, a photo maybe, or a piece of jewelry. He couldn't tell. He stood there for a moment, then walked away without a word, but in his mind, a question had already begun, forming. Who was she running from, and why was she so afraid of being sent back? The next morning, Jackson woke up early as usual. He liked quiet mornings when the engines were silent and the spaceport hadn't yet turned into a shouting match of traders and travelers. He walked toward the engine room and found Rinari still. In the same spot, she hadn't moved much during the night. Blanket wrapped tightly around her, eyes half open like she hadn't slept at all. "You all right?" Jackson asked gently, bringing her a warm drink. She looked at the cup for a long second, then slowly reached out to take it. "Thank you," she whispered, voice soft like dry leaves. As she sipped the drink, Jackson sat down nearby and leaned, back against a wall. "No one came looking for you last night," he said casually. She looked away, her grip on the cup tightening just a little. "I am—" "No one," she said. "No one will look." He didn't believe that. People who were truly no one didn't flinch in their sleep, didn't cry holding small hidden objects, didn't freeze when someone knocked on the door. Jackson noticed a small tear in her robe near the shoulder and something darker beneath. Not fabric, but skin. Bruised skin. "Hey," he said quietly. "Did you fall?" She looked confused at first, then her eyes followed his gaze to the shoulder. She pulled, the robe tighter, shaking her head. "Not fall. Just old pain." Jackson didn't push. He knew the look in her eyes. He'd seen it during the war. Refugees, slaves, lost workers, people who had been broken again and again until they didn't even bother lying well anymore. "Old pain," he repeated softly. "Yeah, I know what that feels like." Renari glanced at him, curious now. "You soldier?" she asked. Jackson nodded slowly. "Once. Not anymore. Now I fix ships. That's all." She took another sip, then held the cup with both hands, warming her fingers. "You fix people too?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. That made him look at her properly. Her eyes were glowing faintly, blue with specks of gold. Beautiful even now. "Not sure I'm good at that," he said. "But I can try." She nodded once. Like that answer was enough for now. Later that day, Jackson left to pick up some parts from the nearby vendor. He locked the ship just in case, told her not to open the door unless she heard the code knock. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. When he returned, she had cleaned the floor, reorganized the tools, and even cooked something. It didn't taste great, but the effort hit him harder than any flavor ever could. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, surprised. She just looked down and mumbled, "I want to stay, if okay." He smiled. "It's okay." But the truth was, Jackson had already made up his mind. She wasn't just a guest anymore. He'd seen too many like her left behind by the system, and he wasn't going to let her become just another name lost in the stars. That night, as the lights dimmed again, Renari didn't curl up near the engine room. Instead, she sat across from him on the bench, holding a data screen she could barely read. He began teaching her a few standard words, correcting her gently. Fix, not fex. Safe, not sif. She laughed once when he made a face to help her remember. A real laugh, small but honest. "You smile now," Jackson said, smiling back. She nodded. "Yes, smile. Feels strange but nice." They talked more. She told him about her planet, once green with floating mountains and glowing rivers, now taken by corporate miners and off-worlders. Her people scattered, sold, forgotten. She had worked under a merchant who promised protection but took everything instead, including her safety, including her voice. She escaped with only a robe, a chipped memory chip, and fear in her bones. Jackson listened, didn't interrupt, didn't pity her, and that made all the difference. When the clock struck midnight, he stood and stretched. "You can use the bed tonight," he said. She shook her head fast. "No, floor is fine. I insist," he said gently but firmly. "I'll take the floor." Renari hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Thank you." Before going to the bunk, she stopped and turned. "Jackson?" "Yeah?" "If someone comes looking, I was never here," she said, voice trembling. "Promise me." Jackson stood up straight, looked into her glowing eyes and said, "I promise." And she believed him. That night, as he lay on the floor with an old jacket as his pillow, he stared up at the ceiling and whispered to himself, "What did you get yourself into this time?" But he already knew. He wasn't just protecting a stranger anymore. He was protecting someone who had no one else in the entire galaxy. The next 2 days were quiet. Jackson worked on the ship's engine upgrades while Renari cleaned tools, labeled wires, and fixed minor leaks with surprising skill. She was quiet, but not as nervous now. She still flinched at loud noises, but her hands didn't shake as much anymore. And once Jackson even caught her humming a soft tune in her own language while working. For a moment, it felt normal, like she'd always belonged there. But peace never lasts long in places like Port, Alien 7, and on the third day, it came knocking. Literally. Bang, bang, bang. 3 hard knocks on the hatch. Jackson stood up immediately. Renari froze near the back, eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. He turned to her, whispering, "Go to the maintenance hatch. Under the bench now." She obeyed instantly. Crawling into the small compartment beneath the metal floor, he closed it gently, sliding the box of spare coils over it to hide the panel. Then he opened the hatch. Outside stood a tall alien male with burnt orange skin and black armor. A bounty. Hunter clearly. His armor had the seal of the Merchant Guild. Clean, dangerous, and expensive. 2 drones hovered behind him. Recording, scanning, watching. "Can I help you?" Jackson asked, keeping his tone casual. The alien didn't smile. Instead, he activated a small hologram disc. A glowing image appeared in the air. Renari's face, hair messy, robe torn, face tired but still recognizable. Beneath her image, fugitive. Class C theft and property violation. 7,000 credits alive. 3,000 credits for confirmed body. The alien said flatly, "Have you seen this girl?" Jackson felt a pulse of rage in his chest, but kept his face calm. He leaned forward, squinting. "Nope, looks like half the refugees around here. Sorry, never seen her." The bounty hunter studied him. The drone's light blinked red once, then blue. "Your ship's logs say you've been docked here for 3 days," the alien said. "Any new passengers? Helpers?" "Just me and a pile of engine grease," Jackson said with a smile. "You want to scan it? Be my guest, it's a mess in there." The alien stared a moment longer, then deactivated the hologram and stepped back. "If you see her," he said coldly, "don't. Protect her. That would make you a criminal too." Jackson smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks for the warning," he said, and shut the hatch. He stood there for a moment, hand still on the door, listening to the fading footsteps and drone buzz. Then, he walked quickly to the maintenance bench, pulled away the box, and opened the panel. Renari was curled into a ball, holding her breath, tears in her eyes. He reached out a hand. "It's okay. He's gone." She didn't move, didn't speak. Jackson knelt beside her, voice softer now. "You're safe." I didn't say a word. At last, she slowly crawled out, hands shaking. "Why?" she asked, voice trembling. "Why lie for me? They will hurt you if they find out." "Because I don't like bullies," Jackson said simply. "Especially the kind who hunt scared girls for money." She sat on the bench, her face pale. Then she whispered, "The bounty, it's real." He nodded. "Yeah, I figured." "I didn't steal," she said quickly. "I escaped. He said I was property. But I'm not." Her voice cracked, and she looked away, shame crawling up her neck like fire. Jackson sat beside her, silent for a moment, then spoke. "People like that think they own everything. Planets, ships, even lives." He looked at her, voice firm now. "But you're not his, you're not anyone's." She looked at him surprised, then tears spilled over her cheeks, silent and raw. "No one ever said that before?" she whispered. Jackson stood up and grabbed his tablet, typing quickly. "What you doing?" she asked. "Wiping my crew logs," he said. "If anyone scans this ship, it'll look like I've been alone for months." He glanced at her. "From now on, you're invisible." Renari sat very still, processing it all. Then she slowly stood, walked over to the rack of clothes near the engine panel. She pulled one of Jackson's spare shirts off the hook, big, gray, soft, and put it on. It covered her thin robe like a second layer of protection. He looked at her, confused. She gave a small smile. "You said I'm not property," she said, "so let me look like crew." He smiled back. It wasn't much, but in that quiet ship, far from any law or order, a small truth was born. She was no longer running alone. She had a place now, even if it was just one old mechanic's ship outside. The stars kept blinking like they always did, but inside, Something had changed forever. Jackson couldn't sleep that night. He lay on his small cot, eyes open, staring at the ceiling of his ship. His mind played the same scene again and again. The bounty hunter, the cold voice, the glowing red word, fugitive, and Renari, hiding in silence under the floor. He turned. His head looked toward the dark hallway where Renari now slept. She had insisted on sleeping by the engine room again. "I feel safer near sound," she had said. But he knew it wasn't the sound. It was the ability to escape. Engines meant freedom. Jackson sat up and rubbed his face. He had helped strangers before, sure. Repairs, smuggling small tech parts, sometimes even hiding goods from nosy inspectors. But this was different. This was a living, breathing person, and now, she was his responsibility. The next morning, Renari was already awake. Folding blankets neatly, Jackson handed her a small protein bar and a cup of warm water. "No breakfast cooking today?" he teased. She gave a small smile. "Too loud last time." They ate in silence, the tension from the bounty hunter still hanging in the air like engine smoke. Finally, Jackson leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You can't stay here forever," he said softly. Renari nodded, but her eyes lowered. "I know," she whispered. "I will leave soon. I don't want trouble for you." Jackson's jaw tightened. "You leaving doesn't solve anything," he said. "They'll catch you out there." She stayed quiet. Jackson tapped the table, thinking, then said, "There's a ship heading out to the outer systems tomorrow. I know the captain. Might be able to get you on board." "Where will it go?" she asked. "Somewhere far," he said. "No law, no merchants, no bounties." Renari's eyes lifted slightly, hopeful, but uncertain. "And you?" she asked. "You come too?" Jackson looked away. "I've got work here. People rely on me." She didn't respond, just nodded slowly. "Then I'll go alone," she said quietly. "Thank you. For everything." But something about that answer twisted inside Jackson's chest. He'd just offered her a way out. So, why did it feel wrong? Later that day, while Renari was cleaning the control panel, she found something small stuck inside the cracks. She pulled it free, a tiny silver bead with a blinking light. Her breath caught. "Jackson," she whispered. This is a tracker." He came over, took one look at it, and cursed under his breath. "Must have been stitched into your old robe," he said. "They're tracking you, Renari." She looked up at him, her hands shaking. "Again?" "They'll come," she said. "They always come." But Jackson shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "Not this time." He threw the tracker into a waste pod and launched it into space, then turned back to her with new fire in his eyes. "I'm changing the plan," he said. "You're not hiding anymore." She blinked, confused. "Then, what do I do?" "You become part of this crew," he said. "For real." Her lips parted slightly, unsure if she heard him right. "Crew?" He nodded. "I'll teach you systems, repairs, protocols, everything. If anyone asks, you're my assistant, my partner, my mechanic in training, not some fugitive, not someone hunted, someone who belongs here." She looked down, overwhelmed. "No one ever wanted me, not like that," she whispered. "Well," Jackson said with a small smile, "I'm not no one." She laughed, a tiny broken sound, but real, then nodded. "Okay, I'll learn." That night, Jackson opened the old crew registry panel and typed in a new name, Renari, engineer's assistant. He looked at the name for a moment, then saved it. It wasn't just text, it was a decision. The next day, he gave her a toolbox and a small data slate filled with diagrams. "Your first lesson, identify every part in here." She took the challenge seriously, sitting on the floor, cross-legged, studying with focus. He watched her from the cockpit and smiled to himself. Maybe this ship wasn't just his anymore. Maybe it was theirs. Just as things started to feel normal again, the outer sensor beeped. Jackson checked the screen. A drone, slowly circling the docking area, not merchant tech, bounty tech, He stood quickly, heart pounding. Rinari, tool lesson. Ends early, he said. We're flying now. She jumped up, dropping the slate. Where? He slid into the pilot chair, hands already moving. Anywhere that's not here. As the engines roared to life and the ship lifted off, Rinari stood beside him, not hiding anymore, not crying, just gripping the seat tightly, ready to face whatever came next. And Jackson, for the first time in years, didn't feel like he was flying alone. The ship shook as it left the dock, engines roaring like a beast awakened. Jackson kept his hands tight on the controls, guiding the vessel through the narrow tunnels of Port Elan 7's lower exit route. Is anyone following? Rinari asked. Gripping the back of the pilot chair, Jackson flicked a switch, checking the radar, one blip, then another. Fast and closing in. Yep, he said, jaw clenched. 2 pursuit drones, looks like bounty class. Rinari's breath caught in. Her throat. They found me. Again. No, Jackson snapped. They're chasing us now. He yanked the ship hard to the right, skimming past a cargo hauler, then shot into a narrow trade lane lined with blinking signs and speeding transports. The bounty drones followed, like angry shadows weaving through traffic without mercy. Jackson turned to Rinari. Take the co-pilot seat now. Me? She gasped. I don't know how to. Your crew now, remember? He said, eyes on the path ahead. You. Learn fast, start now. Rinari sat down quickly, hands shaking. Okay, what do I do? Hold down the stabilizer, and when I say boost, flip that red lever. Don't miss. Okay, she whispered, nodding fast. Outside, the drones closed in. One fired a warning shot that streaked past their ship, burning through a billboard. Jackson, she cried. I see it, he growled, flipping switches. Hold tight. He dove the ship downward, spiraling through the neon canyons of the lower sector. Alarms blared, civilians screamed, and lights flashed past. Like stars being ripped apart. Now, he shouted. Rinari pulled the red lever. The ship jumped forward with a burst of energy, barely missing a transport shuttle. The drones fell behind. But not for long. Jackson cursed. They've upgraded their boosters. They won't. Stop, Rinari said, almost to herself. They never do. Jackson looked at her, sweat on her brow, fear in her eyes. But also something else. She was trying, she wasn't hiding, she was crew. Let's make them stop then, he muttered. He banked left sharply and headed toward the old mining tunnels. Dark, unstable, abandoned. Hold on, this is gonna get rough. The ship entered. The tunnels. Metal groaning as rock walls flew past at insane speed. Inside, sparks rained from the ceiling as the rough terrain shook every bolt loose. But the drones followed, slicing through the narrow openings like sharks in a cave. We can't outfly them here, Rinari shouted. No, Jackson agreed. But we can trap them. He opened a storage panel and tossed Rinari a heavy button-linked detonator. Remote mines, 3 of them are stuck near the engine housing. She stared at the device, unsure. I've never used, just press it when I say, he said. I'll guide them close. Rinari nodded, her hand trembling as she held the detonator close. Jackson dropped the speed, letting the drones gain ground. Then, as they entered, a twisting cavern. Now! Rinari pressed the button. Boom, boom, boom. The mines exploded behind them, the tunnel filled with fire and dust. One drone hit the blast full force, metal and sparks flying across the screen. The second drone veered off, damaged, and slammed into a jagged wall. Radar clear. They'd done it. Rinari let out a loud breath, covering her mouth with both hands. Jackson laughed out loud, relief flooding his face. You did it, he said, turning to her. You just saved our lives, Rinari. Didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was so scared, she admitted. But I didn't want to let you down. Jackson reached over and squeezed her shoulder. You didn't. He guided the ship through a broken cargo gate and up into open space again. Stars stretched before. Them quiet, safe for now. They flew in silence for a while, just breathing. Then Rinari looked over at him. Jackson? Yeah? I don't want to keep running forever, she said. I want to live, I want to learn, I want to stay somewhere without fear. Jackson nodded. I know a place. Off-grid colony, far from merchant guilds or bounty hunters. It's rough, but they don't ask questions. Will you come with me? She asked softly. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the stars for a moment, then smiled. Your crew, Renari, he said. Wherever you go, I go. 2 days passed since the tunnel chase. The ship floated in quiet space. Now far from patrol lanes and trade routes, the stars blinked like tiny eyes watching from a distance. But here, there was no danger, no bounty hunters, no drones, just peace. Jackson leaned back in the pilot chair, eyes closed. The hum of the engine was steady, the controls calm. Beside him, Renari sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by wires, tools, and data chips. She was learning, fixing the ship's interior lighting with her own hands. Red goes. To red, she muttered, then stopped. Or is it blue to red? Jackson smiled without opening his eyes. Blue is power, red is ignition, unless you want to launch the escape pod by accident. She laughed softly, her voice still quiet, but warmer now. Noted, she said, and kept working. She wore one, of his old flight jackets now, sleeves rolled up, her silvery blue skin peeking through the cuffs. She looked nothing like the scared girl who spilled a drink just days ago. Renari was changing. Slowly, but truly later, over a warm meal in the small kitchen corner. She asked a question she had been holding in for a while. Where is this place we're going? Jackson looked up from his plate. Planet's called Isla 9, he said. It's not on the main maps. Small, cold, but friendly. Ex-soldiers, miners, and folks like us, just trying to live free. Like a hiding place? She asked. More. Like a starting place, he said. No guilds, no slavers, no trackers. Just stars, trees, and broken tech to fix. She tilted her head. Will they accept me? He nodded. They won't care who you were, only who you are now. That night, while Renari slept peacefully in the crew bunk, Jackson stared at the stars through the top hatch. His ship had always been quiet, but now it felt different, more alive, more human, even with an alien on board. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Renari appeared, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Can't sleep? He asked. She nodded. Too quiet, but not in a bad way. She sat beside him, both of them looking out at the sky. When I was small, she began. My mother said stars were the eyes of our ancestors, always watching, always guiding. Jackson smiled. My dad said something similar, said stars remember everything we forget. They sat in silence, sharing memories neither fully understood, but both felt. Renari looked at him suddenly, eyes serious. Can I ask you something personal? He nodded. Go ahead. Why did you really help me? She asked. Even after you knew I was wanted, tracked, dangerous? Jackson took a deep breath. Because I once saw a girl like you during the war, he said quietly. She was about your age, trapped in a ruined city. I tried to help her, but I was too late. He paused, voice tight. I told myself if I ever got a second chance, I wouldn't fail. Renari reached out and placed her hand on his. You didn't fail this time, she said, her voice steady. I'm still here because of you. He looked at her, surprised by how strong she sounded. You saved me too, she added. I was just surviving before, not living. Now, I want to live. He nodded slowly. We'll both live. Together. 2 more days passed. Finally, Isla 9 appeared through the viewport. A quiet, green and white world tucked behind a nebula. The ship descended through clouds, soft rain tapping. The landing pad was simple. Metal over stone surrounded by trees and moss. Jackson stepped out first, stretching his back, breathing the cold, fresh air. Renari followed, her eyes wide, lips slightly open. It's beautiful, she whispered. A man with a gray beard and robotic arm greeted them. Jackson, he said, shaking hands. Didn't expect you back so soon and with company. She's crew, Jackson said, voice firm. Name's Renari. Smart, fast, loyal. The man smiled kindly. Well then, she's welcome. Renari bowed slightly, still unsure how to act. But the man just laughed. Relax, kid. Around here, we don't bow. We build, we eat, and we help each other. By evening, Renari had already helped repair 2 panels and set up her small sleeping space inside the colony outpost. Jackson brought her a mug of local tea. You did. Good today, he said. She looked up at him and smiled. Thank you, she said, for bringing me here. He raised his mug. To new beginnings. She raised hers too. To family. Weeks passed on Isla 9. Time moved slower here. Days were filled with fixing old tech, helping neighbors build homes, and gathering around quiet fire pits under the stars. For the first time in years, Jackson felt peace in his bones, and for the first time in her life, Renari felt safe. She smiled more now, spoke more clearly, even laughed out loud sometimes. Bright, full, real laughter. One afternoon, Jackson found her in the workshop, carefully patching a piece of old fabric. He leaned against the doorframe and raised an eyebrow. What you working on there? Renari looked up and held up the item with both hands. It was his shirt, the same white one she'd spilled on when they first met. The blue stain was still there, faint but visible, but now it was clean, neatly folded, and sewn with small patches of silver thread around the collar. You kept this? Jackson asked, stepping closer, surprised. She nodded. I found it in storage, she said. Thought you threw it away. I figured you did, he said with a chuckle. After all, you were pretty determined to wash it that first day. She smiled, tracing the fabric gently with her fingers. It was all I could offer you then, she said softly. An apology. Jackson sat beside her, watching her work. Funny how something small can change everything, he said. Renari looked. How about you think it changed you? He nodded. That moment? Yeah, he said. I didn't plan to take anyone in. I just wanted a quiet life. But then this nervous little alien girl dumped blue juice on me and begged to clean my shirt. And suddenly I wasn't alone anymore. Renari looked down at the shirt again. I didn't mean to ruin it, she whispered. I was scared. I was clumsy. I was nothing back then. Hey, Jackson said, his voice firm but gentle. You were never nothing. She met his eyes, and for a moment, her walls dropped completely. She wasn't the refugee anymore. She wasn't the fugitive. She wasn't the broken girl in hiding. She was Renari Engineer's assistant, part of a home, part of his home. You've given me everything, she said quietly. A place to stay, a reason to wake up, a future. Jackson looked at her. You gave me something too, he said. You made this place feel like more than just a hiding spot. You made it human, she laughed gently. But I'm not human, he smiled. Doesn't matter. She folded the shirt, set it gently in a drawer by her sleeping area. I want to keep it, she said, not because I owe you anything, but because it reminds me where I started. He nodded. Then it's yours. That night, they joined the rest of the colony by the fire pit. Someone played music on an old speaker. Kids ran around chasing glowing bugs, and the sky above was filled with stars. Renari sat beside Jackson, sharing a warm bowl of soup. A small child tugged at her jacket. Miss Renari, can you tell the story again? The one about how you met? Jackson raised an eyebrow. You told them already? Renari grinned. They like stories. She turned to the child and began. I was walking through a loud spaceport holding a cup of sweet blue drink, and then, boom, I hit a human and it went all over his white shirt. The kids laughed wide-eyed. And then what happened? Renari winked. He said I could wash it, but what I didn't know was he was going to change my whole life. Jackson laughed, leaning back, watching her tell the story. There was light in her voice now, strength in her words. She was no longer the girl who flinched at shadows. She had grown roots here, and so had he. After the fire burned low and the children drifted off to sleep, Renari stood beside Jackson near the edge of the cliff that overlooked the forest. I used to be afraid of silence, she said, but now I like it. He nodded. It's the kind that means peace, not danger. She looked at him, eyes glowing softly in the moonlight. Jackson, she whispered, I want to stay here forever. He looked at her, placing a hand on her shoulder. You can, he said. You will. She smiled, leaning her head lightly against him, and they stood there watching the stars. No bounty hunters, no more running, just two souls, once broken, now whole, together and somewhere, folded quietly. In a drawer was the shirt that had started it all.